Welcome to How Would You Write It, the podcast where we talk about the stories behind the story. I'm Nanea Taylor, and I love sitting down with actors, producers, screenwriters, and novelists to talk about their creative processes. So if you are interested in any way about the art or craft of storytelling, you're in the right place. Today, I have a special guest, Danielle Nicki, who is one of my favorite people in the writing community. And she and the reason why she's here, why she's so special to me, is because she has made it into some writers' rooms that you may know because there are some special shows that have been out there that she's working on. And I want to give her a chance to kind of talk about her pathway to getting there. But a little bit short bio on Danny, as I call her. Danielle Nicki is a television and feature writer living in Los Angeles. You might recognize her from the app formerly known as Twitter, but she hopes you know her name from television writing. Credits on Leverage, Redemption, and Chicago Fire. And the shows that she has written on, honey, they are so good. Okay. Where she's written 4 episodes. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you, Tay. Appreciate you having me.
I am so very thrilled and blessed that you have taken the time to come out and just kind of talk to us.
Of
And like
course.
I said in the intro, I wanted to have you on the show so you can kind of talk about the pathway to getting into the writer's room and what it took you to get there, in hopes to help others to recognize that there are steps. And then once you get into those rooms, that doesn't mean that the hustle stops.
No.
So, can we talk about your beginnings of writing? Like, when were you interested in becoming a screenwriter? Like, where was that influence? Where did that influence come from?
Um, well, initially I was like, I want to be a writer. And I think like a lot of people, writing equaled novels and books, because a lot of people don't really realize that screenwriting is a path. I know I didn't for sure. And so I thought I was going to be a novelist. And I started writing a book and I thought it was terrible and I quit. It was like 15 years ago. And I also had 3 small kids and, excuse. But the point is, I quit. But I always felt like there was something missing, like I should be writing in some way. I just wasn't sure what my path was.
Mhm.
And I had gone back to school to take a couple courses, and one of them was a film appreciation class. And after the course was done, I turned in my final paper, and the teacher was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about screenwriting? Because the way you write your papers is cinematic, the way you're telling your stories." And he was like, "You don't have to take a class, just go home, download a bunch of screenplays and read them, learn everything you can from them, and then just start writing." And so I went home and I downloaded my first script. It was Juno.
Yeah,
And I read it and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is the path. This is the type of writing that I relate to."
mhm.
And so I just did what that teacher told me. I downloaded a ton of scripts. I read a bunch of scripts. I wrote a bunch of really horrible drafts of things, until I found my voice.
Mhm.
And so I think for me personally, reading screenplays versus going to school was more beneficial for me because I learned what actually got produced
Mhm.
versus what somebody says, this is how you write a screenplay.
Mhm.
So that those certain habits I didn't build that I had to break later. So
Mhm.
I just went in initially with, this is who I am, this is the way I like to write scripts. And then I developed it and got better over the years.
Wow. Okay. Now, when you started writing scripts, and like you said, when every screenwriter should know this, it's always horrible out the gate. Like,
Horrible.
because you're learning the craft, you're learning the formatting, you're learning the pacing, you're learning building characters, and you're learning that you don't need to write a full fledged. Johnny went into the room, picked up the red apple, ate the apple. You don't have to put all the filler into the sentences. And, because that's a different difference from coming from a novelist. A novelist has to write all of that. A screenwriter
Yes.
doesn't. And
Hmm.
so is learning that craft and building that craft. Now, when you started kind of getting into screenwriting, where did you find support and community
Online.
online?
That was it. I, at the time, because I'm from California, but I wasn't living in California at the time. And the only place I found other screenwriters was online. And that's why in my bio, I mentioned the app formerly known as Twitter, because that's where I met you. That's where I met my entire writing community. That's where I met the person who recommended me to my manager.
Mhm.
So all of that community and um, how I learned about screenwriting competitions and just everything related to the business, I came from the community that I was able to build online.
So let's talk about the screenwriting contest.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find that that helped you hone your skills or helped you? Would you recommend in for you in your pathway? Let me just say that, not even recommend, on your pathway to getting in the door. Would you Was that pertinent for you to kind of participate in the screenwriting contest for your
I
pathway?
wouldn't I wouldn't say it was pertinent.
Mhm.
There was definitely some benefits.
Mhm.
I won a couple of competitions, and in that, you get the community of other like finalists and winners and things. And so I have several group chats with other people that were involved in the programs that I was involved in. And just like any writers group that you might form, where you share scripts and you give feedback, it's all just about different perspectives. And
Mhm.
so, I write a certain genre and a certain format, but then if you give it to somebody that writes a different genre and format, then you get a different type of perspective. And then people who come from different backgrounds. I remember once giving a script to an actor, which I thought was a little weird for feedback.
Mhm.
And the things that this person focused on were totally different than things that other writers focused on. So
Mhm.
I think that was the benefit of the screenwriting competitions and fellowships and everything that I was involved with. It was mostly just the community and the other writers that I was able to be with.
And so that community that you built, just piggybacking off of the going out and getting feedback from different perspectives, and trusting in that kind of feedback that you get in the community that you found online. Were there? Um, I know it was kind of organic because online is organic, but when you went out to community, were there certain voices you were looking at to give you feedback on that you when you network and brought in that community, were there specific kind of voices you were looking at for feedback for your writing to kind of hone your skills?
Not necessarily, because I feel like you can benefit from anybody. I feel like everybody has good ideas, So how they say, in a writer's room, it's like, I want to hear from the assistants, I want to hear from, the executive, I want to hear from everybody, because I don't agree that the good ideas come from right here.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can give you something and then you process it through your own situation and you're able to come up with a really great organic thing. Um, but what I will say is that once I was able to build the community,
Mm-hmm.
I do have my brain trust, which you're a part of,
Mm-hmm.
that I know if I send it to this person, I'm going to get this type of feedback. If I send it to this person, they're going to be my rah rah cheerleader. And sometimes you just need that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other people who are super technical and they're going to find every typo and they're going to find every mistake and everything. And that's what you need. And so it's good to cast a wide net maybe at first. So
Mm-hmm.
then you can will it down to like, okay, these are my core people
Mm-hmm.
that they come to me and I come to them and we can really be helpful to each other.
Yes. So, and that is to me is so important for folks to know is find your community.
Hmm.
Find the ones that, like Danny has stated, who is different, kind of how they look and view and give feedback is in different ways. and that they're going to be honest with you because, and they actually want you to succeed.
Mhm.
Like they
Yes.
really truly are cheerleading you on. They want you to succeed. So find your community. And with that finding of the community, you found someone, or there was someone in the community that was like, I love her writing and I want to recommend her to my manager. So when you were speaking to the manager about the manager possibly becoming your manager, what kind of process was that? Did you have to present like your writings? Did you have to do kind of like a like we're doing now, like a Zoom, or meet them in the office and kind of present yourself to them? How was that process?
Mhm. So it was it was in 2020 during lockdown. So everything was on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
But the person who recommended me sent them a script, which they liked, and then they asked for a second script. So that's another huge tip, is to always have a number two,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like the way of thinking is that anybody can do something good once. So
Mm-hmm.
they want to make sure that you can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people will tell you that it has to be in the exact same genre, it has to be the same thing so they can know how to package you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't agree with that, because I feel like if you have figured out who you are as a writer, then your fingerprint is all over everything you write. And so that's what happened with me. I didn't send two of the exact same scripts, but it was enough to to have my manager want to set up a meeting, and we met. And for me, just what I will say is that it's not just you wanting to sign with them, they should want to sign with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you should have questions and requirements going into the meeting. You know, don't accept the first date just because it's the first date. You know, is this a good fit? Because one thing that I've heard and that I agree with is that having bad representation is worse than having no representation.
Mm-hmm.
So go into it knowing exactly what you're looking for. These are the types of shows or movies that I want to make. This is the path that I want to go down. And if this person is willing to get on that ride with you, then that's a good fit. Or if you're unsure, maybe have that dialogue with them. And if what they recommend works for you, then yes. But a lot of times I see people, jumping into these things. It's like, oh, a manager wanted me. So you go in and they have a completely different idea of what your career trajectory should be than you do. And that can cause a lot of problems.
Are there any specific questions that you would recommend people walk into those meetings with that you
Well, they always ask, it's like, who else do you rep?
mm-hmm.
Um, Based on what you read of me, what do you think my path is? Uh, Things like that, to get specific.
Mm-hmm.
Try not to be too broad.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it's always good to come in with your own expectations and your own questions, because then you two can have a dialogue. Because you can be like, oh no, I'm supposed to write blah blah blah, I'm supposed to write comedy,
Mm-hmm.
and the person who's reading you can be like, I know you think that, but
Mm-hmm.
you're actually a drama writer because of this and this, because of their experience, or how they what they read from you on the page.
Mm-hmm.
So be open to a conversation and a dialogue with the person, and then just take it from there. They may not know you. You could be like, no, screw you, I'm a comedy writer.
Mm-hmm.
Then go find somebody who wants to rep you like that.
Yeah.
So that's just the way I believe you should approach these meetings.
Perfect. Okay, so when you got the manager and you all decided to sit down with each other, and this is my just because my background is a little bit of legal.
Mhm.
When you had that contract, would you recommend with you and the manager, would you recommend anyone legally looking at that contract before you sign it with the manager? Or um is
Yes. The
okay,
answer is always
okay,
yes.
okay, okay. I was trying to battle it. Okay, okay. All right.
Always,
Always.
always, always.
Always.
Yes.
Okay. So when you got the manager,
Mhm.
what is the how did it come to now they're pushing you and pushing your work out? And how does that work? How does that work once you have a manager?
I think it depends on you and your manager. I've since also signed with an agent.
Mhm.
And so that's how the most recent job came through the agency.
Mhm.
But managers are there to help shape your career And so that might be helping you figure out what to write, because sometimes people need that assistance. Or once you write it, they want you to send them an outline, and then they want to be able to help shape that. And then you send, so they're very involved in every step.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then from there, they were like, okay, we're going to develop. You're going to go the development route, or you're going to go the staffing route, or, you know, there's lots of different ways to make a living.
Okay.
And for me, I didn't need the development, not the development, like the step by step in my script phase kind of assistance. It was more like, here's what I wrote. He could do like notes, the notes pass on it, and then we discuss what we do with it.
Okay.
Who do we send it to? That type of thing. But when
Okay.
I
So it's all,
first,
it's a partnership of that discussion of who he's going to send it to. They help you hone that script to make it
mhm,
better, and you all sit down on the game plan if it's going to go in development or if you're going to send it out to different. I'm assuming shows or network.
production companies
Mhm.
and stuff like that. Yeah. Mhm,
Okay. And so you said so that's a manager, and you also now have an agent.
mhm.
So what is the difference, if you can tell us?
An agent is not interested in helping you develop your career. They're
Okay.
helping you make money.
Mm.
So they, if you have both, you
Mhm.
do the game planning and that kind of thing with each individual script with your manager. Once it's done, you
Mhm.
send it to the agent, and the agent either gets you staffed or sold or things like that. So there's
Did
a
the
pretty
agent come
distinct
about
difference.
by your relationship with the manager?
Yes,
Okay.
somewhat, kind of in a background way. Like
Okay.
my manager knew him, but he didn't get the script from him. He got it organically. It landed on his desk.
I love it because, again, to me, that's saying your name and how you come across in your writing. So, whew, that's just okay. So, audience, that's to me, that's just saying, hey, hone your craft. Be someone
Mhm.
personable that people like. Be someone that people, like she said, hey, she built a community, that people have read her work. She's given feedback on other people's scripts that they recommend you. Your name is said in rooms you know nothing about. And
Exactly. Yeah.
that's how it kind of happened for her, which I love. Anyway, okay, so let's talk about getting on Leverage Redemption and then going to Chicago Fire. Um, when you had, so did you have the agent and the manager at the same time for Leverage, or did you have the manager at first for
Just
Leverage?
the manager.
Just for
Just
the
the manager.
manager,
Yeah.
okay. And
Hmm.
so you got into Leverage. Was there like an interview process with the showrunner before you got into Leverage? Like, what does that process
Hmm.
look
So for this one, after I signed with my manager, he kind of painted the town with my pilot. And so I went on a ton of general meetings the first year I was with him, like 50.
like?
And in that time, I met one of the producers
Hmm.
that produces the show.
Hmm.
So it was an initial meeting, just hey, how you doing? We really hit it off. And then later, when they were staffing, my manager was pushing pretty hard. He was calling her constantly, just
Hmm.
hey, don't forget, she'd be great for this show. And so when I had the meeting, it was with her and with the showrunner.
Hmm.
No, with a producer, another producer. So it was two producers.
Okay.
When I passed that interview, then I got to meet the showrunner.
Uh-huh.
And it was a really quick, how Jane Espenson calls it a pants interview.
Uh-huh.
It really was just to make sure that you wear pants, that you're not like, you're somebody that they want to meet with and sit in a room with for hours. And so it was a pretty quick meeting with the showrunner. And I found out that I got the job the next day. And then I had to start, that was a Friday, I believe, and I had to start Monday.
Ooh,
So
that's quick.
that's another tip once because there's levels to TV writing. When you're coming in at the entry level, you're the last hire.
Hmm.
So have your bags packed.
And ready to go. Okay.
Hmm.
Are there any tips or can you tell folks what a general meeting consists of and what you need to be prepared to talk about and present? And if you have, and maybe how you sign off on the general meeting, like, a tip of
Sure.
what you should say at the end.
Yeah. General meetings, you've got to be prepared to talk about yourself quite a bit. People want to know your origin story, basically. They want to know, like you asked me, how did I get into writing? And so a to have a script.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a long one that, I mean, it's changed over the years, but initially it was just a long from this is where I was born to this is how I got here. And then you have to know it so well that you can jump in at any place in the question because you don't know what they're going to ask you,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're going to be like, so who are you? Start from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so you start from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
Or they ask, like you said, how did you get into writing? Or very specifically, what made you write the script that they read that got you the general meeting?
Mm-hmm.
So just be prepared to talk about yourself and be comfortable doing it in a way that doesn't seem like you're reading a script. It's
Mm-hmm.
just who you are because it's your life, but you have to be able to, just like when you're writing, pick out the most important, most interesting, most propulsive
Mm-hmm.
things that lead from one moment in your life to the next.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. You also have to be prepared to talk about your scripts. So either the one that they read that got you the meeting, why you wrote it, what brought it on your desk, if it was IP, what made you chase after it, just why is it important to you?
Mm-hmm.
And the dreaded question, why me? Why am I the person that,
Right. That.
should
Yeah.
have written this
That's the
script?
hardest part. Like, why are you? Why me?
Hmm.
Like, okay.
Yeah, but also, your script should tell them why your script got you the meeting. So
Mm-hmm.
just feel good about yourself there because if they didn't like your writing, you wouldn't be sitting there talking to them. So
Mm-hmm.
that's always good. And then any other projects that you have, because they will ask too, what else do you have? If
Mm-hmm.
you wrote a horror, for example, do you have another horror script that I can read? Or do you write anything else other? Because sometimes there's something that was in your writing that drew them to you, but the script isn't necessarily what they're looking for. So they're trying to fill you out and see what else you got. They got a mandate yesterday that says that they need marshmallow monsters. And you're like, oh shit, I have a marshmallow monsters script that I wrote. But
Mm-hmm.
they're just trying to figure out what is it? What do you have?
Mm-hmm.
And then just make sure that you let them know that you enjoyed talking to me. You asked about the send off.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for meeting with me. I really appreciated talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's okay to ask if it's okay to keep in touch.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes people are a little afraid to ask that question and they think that the communication has to go through your reps. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to you face to face. Is it okay if I email you sometimes? If I write another script, can I talk to you about it? I've never had somebody say no.
Mm-hmm.
So then they can share their email with you right then and you can have a direct contact. And I come from a different background. I worked in corporate.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a spreadsheet of everybody I met, any important things we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
anything they asked about, what script they read, and their contact information. So then
Mm-hmm.
I can follow up in like 6 months or something.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a good tip. That's a very
Mm-hmm.
good tip. I never even thought about that. I never even thought about saying to them, is it okay to, keep in contact with them? Because I always thought like, well, maybe that's too impertinent for me to even ask that of them. Why would
It
they
might be, but I do it anyway.
be? No, no, going forward, I'll make sure I do that. Okay. So what is a writer's room like when you're in a writer's room? Can you kind of give an overview of what happens in a writer's room?
Well, they're all different, I will say that. But mostly it's just whether it's in Zoom or in person, you come in and you just go by what the showrunner or the number two, who sometimes runs the room because the showrunners are super busy, like what their plan is for today. Today, we're going to talk about this. We really need to, dig down on this one story point or anything like that. And it's mostly just filling up your board. You have a big board on the wall or on your screen if it's Zoom. And you need to hit those act breaks and you need to fill in the blanks and it's character development. So it's just everything that we do by ourselves
Mm-hmm.
in our bedrooms on our little whiteboards with our cards or whatever. You're doing that in a room full of 6 to 10 people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really fun because in that situation you're able to jump off, and so you might have a suggestion, a pitch for something, and it's not quite right. It's
Mm-hmm.
not what they're looking for, but that can set somebody else down a path. You brought something up in their head, and then they can go from here and then go from here. And so no one person writes a script, an episode, because there's feedback from everybody in it. And it gets to the point where you don't remember who came up with what idea. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, that was a really good, I don't know. Where did that come from? Because it's just constant. You're just throwing pitches out. And in the beginning, you can be really nervous about opening your mouth. And I've heard weird things, something where it's like, staff writers shouldn't speak or they should only speak a certain amount of times. But I feel like you just have to read the room.
Mm-hmm.
Don't, oh, big one. Don't repitch something that has been rejected twice.
Okay.
Because that tends to be something that newer writers do a lot. You're super passionate about this one idea and you think it will work.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's shot down a couple times, just let it go. And so, you know, memories are short in there. Nobody's going to be like, oh my God, Daddy just made the dumbest pit. Nobody's thinking about that. Just
Mm-hmm.
if you feel like it could work, just join into the group and find out where's your niche? Where do you fit in? Because not everybody is good at everything, and they don't staff thinking everybody's good at everything.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for something. Who's good at pitching? Who's good at character? Who's good at action? Who's good at relationship stuff? And so when you come together, you're just this huge, really interesting hive mind. That's what
Ooh,
it's supposed to be.
yeah, that's fantastic. So when you get the chance to write an episode, how is that? Like, what is that taking all the ideas out of that kind of think tank and putting it all on page? And then once you do that, how I guess my biggest question is like, how many chances do you have to write that one episode? Do you get a couple drafts or do you get that one draft in and
It depends. That
okay.
also depends. Yeah. So I've had one job in streaming and one job in broadcast. And I can tell you the broadcast moves at a breakneck speed. It's really fast. So it just depends. If you have enough time to do another draft, then that takes work off of the showrunner's plate.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's no time, if you had to write the episode in 3 days to begin with, and then they have a day to do a pass on it before we have to turn it in and start prep, then that's what it is.
Okay.
It's not personal. It's about serving this monster
Mm-hmm.
that is television, and deadlines have to be met. So there's sometimes where you're like, oh my God, I would love to get another chance to do a pass on it, but there's just no time. And so it's taken from you, and the showrunner does their pass and they move on.
Okay, so you answered my question. So you'll do the episode, you'll write your episode, and then it does go to the showrunner. The showrunner will do their pass
Always,
on it, and then
always.
then that will be what is sent over to the cast and crew to film.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, then I'm gonna ask my fangirl question now. Do you ever get a chance to meet any of the actors? Like, how does Hodge on Leverage? Did you ever get a chance to meet any of the actors? Um,
So for Leverage, we didn't go to set
mhm.
because it was still
Oh
COVID
yes.
time with the COVID restrictions. And so the showrunner went. And then we had a producing director on site
Mhm.
who handled most of the things. But I did meet they brought them in, the cast in on our Zooms, and we got to meet them and ask them questions. And because a lot of times the actors will have some special skill, like, oh, I know jujitsu or whatever. And so, or I'm really good at languages. And so then you can incorporate it into the
That
scripts, into the show based on really cool things that they already know how to do.
that is so cool.
But for Chicago Fire, I've gone to set, and so I have met everybody, which is great. So I've been able to produce my episodes here.
Wait a minute. Hold up. You were able to produce? Which
Mm-hmm.
episode? Which one? Which one you did for?
You're a mess. So the one last year after the strike,
Uh-huh.
nobody went to set on that one, but the two that I've done this season, yes.
Danny, so you have a producer's credit. I'm so proud. I'm so proud. Oh my God. I'm so happy for okay. Okay. So gotta ask about that. How did that happen? How did you get to the producer portion of it? Like how did that happen?
Well, I just want to make it clear, I'm not producer level yet.
No,
You
no,
still
no,
have to
but
move up
I
and you're
know,
officially
yeah.
producer. But
Mhm.
yeah, so going to set, it's just to keep the vision clear.
Mm-hmm.
So the
From
showrunner
the
has a
script that you
vision, we've
wrote.
all
Mhm.
come together. Exactly. And so, you're just sitting there with the director and the script supervisor, and you're making sure that what's happening, at least we get takes that show what we need it to show. So then when we're cutting it together later, we get the vision out.
So
So,
basically,
but
that
that's
was like
basically your job there, is to go there and just to make sure that the vision is being protected. Obviously, there's really interesting things that happen, and that's why you do multiple takes, but you need to, your job is just to make sure that you get the takes that are needed to to produce the show that you're supposed to be producing.
I love that. Oh my God. I didn't even know that was a possibility. Thank you for
Oh, yeah.
that that's something that can be done. Like I mean, I don't know why I wouldn't think that, but that is just wonderful. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. And I think that it's important. I learned so much just about storytelling and going there. And that used to be the path.
Hmm.
You know, people went to set, and a lot of times that's being taken away. So it's really great whenever a writer gets a chance to go and still, especially if you have to hop on a plane, because if it's an LA production, then of course you should go to set.
Hmm.
But we fly to another state. So
Hmm.
that's really great that they allow us to do that.
Fantastic. With your career path, now that you kind of, have a kind of idea what being a producer is that something your next step is directing part of your path? Like, what is your career path moving forward?
Producing for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, production company, all of that. Maybe directing in the future, but for sure producing.
I know you can do anything you set your mind to, Danny. So I'm
Oh,
just
thank you, love.
okay. So thank you for that because I feel like this is all like great information for people who are outside looking in right now.
Mm.
To know that there is a way and a path forward. And don't get me wrong, everyone, their pathways are different for everyone. But to
Mhm.
hear it from someone who's made it into the room and who's still building her career and going upwards, which I know you are, I just wanted that kind of expertise now from someone who's a WGA writer now. I love that about you, Danny, because you have been so open to be able to pass along that information to us. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk
Of
about
course.
that with me. Are there any up and coming projects that you would like to share with us that you're working on or looking forward to coming out that you can share?
Not much I can share. I will say I'm working on features because I'm also, feature writer.
Mhm.
So just trying to move forward in development on that side as well.
Okay. All right. I know you can't talk about most, but I appreciate you talking about coming and talking as much as you could about, you know, uh, the the art and the craft and the pathway of writing and getting in the
Of
doors. I
course, it was my
appreciate it.
pleasure.
So you can't leave. I always ask people this question before we sign off.
Let's go.
If there was a current IP or a past IP that you wish that you had a chance to be at the table for, at that table, what is that IP? And then at that table, what would you have brought?
Well, anybody who knows me knows that I would have loved to have been in the Breaking Bad room for sure.
Mhm. Mhm, 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 mhm.
What I loved about that show so much, and the way, well, I will back up and say that I am the writer that I am because that's the pilot I studied the most.
Mhm.
And Vince Gilligan didn't follow the rules, quote unquote, that they were trying to tell me I had to do to write. And so being in that show would have been more like how they write themselves into a corner and then they just have to figure out how to get out. And that's my bread and butter. That's what I love. So I think that's what I would have brought to that room, is
Oh,
just jumping right in. Like there was a moment I think where they cut off a head of somebody and then put it on a turtle, and then somebody was like, well, what about if the turtle, blows up? And it's like, yes, exactly. What if
mhm.
the turtle blew up? That's just the kind of room that makes me excited.
Ooh. Chills. Love it. Okay. Where can folks find you, Danny?
I'm at Danielle Nicki everywhere.
Danny
So
everywhere.
if I'm on the platform, it's at Danielle Nicki.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Danny, for coming on. I appreciate you.
Thank you,
If you
Tay.
ever get any other projects that you would love to come and talk about, if you can, please come back to How Would You Write It?
I
I would
will.
so enjoy to see your face again and to hear about your accomplishments because I know it's even bigger and better things coming for you. I know it is because
I
you're
will.
just that good. And I
Oh,
appreciate you so much. With
thank you.
that being said, audience, if no one has told you today that they believe in you, that they believe in you, I'm telling you, I believe in you. You have this gift for a reason. And just like Danny said, there are pathways to getting there. So don't give up on yourself if there's no one, calling out for your work or no one's asking you for your work or your gift. You know you have this talent. You can do this. So keep going. Don't let anyone get in your way and don't you get in your way. With that being said, we'll see you next time on How Would You Write It?